All right, thank you so much. Over to you, Priyanka.
Good morning, everybody. Am I audible? Okay. Thank you for joining in. I'm really pleased to moderate this session today, which is called From Volume to Value, Role of AI in Redefining India's Pharma Leadership for Viksit Bharat 2047. Let me first introduce our panelists. We have a very esteemed set of panelists here to discuss the topic. We have Dr. Sharvil Patel. He is the Managing Director of Zydus Life Sciences and also the President of Indian Pharmaceutical Alliance. He has driven Zydus Life Sciences forward in terms of innovation in small molecules, biologics, vaccines across most of the global markets. He also brings a perspective of the overall Indian pharma industry, a sector-wide view on where the industry is headed. We also have Winslow Tucker. He's the President and General Manager for Lilly in India. He brings a global innovator's lens on how AI is reshaping different parts of the value chain of pharma and also driving a lot of access and expansion in India. We also have Dr. Amit Sheth. He's the founding director of IRO, and we will have him talk about it in a moment. India AI Research Organization. It's a new research organization which has just been founded, and I will invite him to talk about the vision. He is also a professor at University of South Carolina, where he founded the University-wide AI Institute. He brings a long-term foundational view, focused not just on the applications of AI, but on the kind of knowledge-driven and neurosymbolic approaches needed for complex domains like biology and medicine. And then we have Mr. Sudarshan Jain. He's the Secretary General of Indian Pharmaceutical Alliance. He is representing the voice of the Indian pharma industry on topics of research, on topics of industry priorities, quality, innovation, and global positioning. So let me set this up by talking about the brief context, and then I'll ask a few questions of the panelists. Indian pharmaceutical industry, as we all know, is globally recognized for its scale and reliability. India supplies about 20% of the global generic medicines and about 60% of the vaccines, reaching more than 190 countries. This scale advantage has popularly made India the title of being called the pharmacy of the world. The stated ambition for Viksit Bharat 2047 is to, however, build a USD 500 billion pharmaceutical industry, several fold more than it is today, and that cannot happen by volume expansion alone. Over 2/3 of the global pharmaceutical value pool sits in innovative medicines, new chemical entities, as well as new biological entities. A structural shift from volume to value is therefore imperative. This pivot is also supported by the government and policy. The recent union budget emphasized Biopharma Shakti with increased allocations and policy thrust for biologics, innovation-led R&D, advanced manufacturing, and deep tech integration. Artificial intelligence sits at the core of this transition, not as a standalone solution, but as an enabling layer across discovery, development, manufacturing, and patient engagement. This panel is therefore very timely because we are sitting at the intersection of industry ambition to move from volume to value, public policy thrust, global innovation, and frontier research. It also reflects a collaboration between IPA and IRO, where IRO has identified pharma as its flagship sector for building sovereign, India-owned AI capabilities. The central question for us that we will talk about today, therefore, is not whether AI will transform pharma, but how quickly and deliberately Indian pharma can use AI to shift from world's largest supplier by volume to its most valuable innovation hub. While we discuss this, we'll keep in mind the 3 sutras of the summit: people, planet, and progress, ensuring that innovation improves patient lives, scales responsibly, and creates shared value for economic progress. With that, let me ask the first question for Dr. Sheth. Dr. Sheth, you've called IRO the ISRO of AI. If you could explain to us what IRO's mission is, maybe in just simple 3 statements, but also talk about why pharma, why is pharma your focus, and what are some very practical and realistic outcomes that you can expect over the next couple of years from this collaboration.
Thank you very much, Priyanka. So Indian AI Research Organization, as you can see, with ISRO, you replace space by AI. In a way, we are taking the value of ISRO, the frugal innovation, but of such great importance, and that's what we want to do here with AI, powering the solutions with AI. There have been 2-3 main drivers for IRO. First is that India lacks high-end AI talent. So yesterday in the panel I asked to the audience, suppose I had all the money that DeepSeek's founder has, can I get 200 to 250 very high-end talent that DeepSeek had? And out of nearly 100 people, 3 people raised hand, and 2 of them were students. So anybody who has general understanding of where we are, I think they spoke. We have a lot of skill. We have a lot of skill in AI that can help Indian IT service company to get the job done. So first is that IRO is creating world-class talent, but in India. IRO faculty, IRO senior people, the people who founded IRO. Here I have Dr. Niyogi from University of Texas, Austin, Dr. Vasant Hona from Penn State, Dr. Srini Parthasati from Ohio State, and several others here. And Ramesh Jain, we have trained 190 PhD students who are world class, and we think that what we are able to do in the US, we will be able to do here, and rather shortly. So first is create a world class talent. Secondly, we wanted to not just create talent, but go, what Prime Minister says, go from prototypes to product. And so we want to create original IP and provide an ecosystem to get it to the market very soon. And for that we are doing 2 things. We are working with the startups, and I have a colleague here, Juhi Bhatnagar. She is a investor, but gotten a very large number of investors ready, pre-seed, angel, seed, and growth stage that are available to us. So our startups don't start for money, and we can, the co-development will be done with IRO. So that way their cost will be much lower, and the likelihood of success will be much higher, right? We have platforms, we have many other technological expertise that could be shared. Then we also want to do corporates where we can achieve short-term economic impact. When we are looking at, and IRO is supposed to be PPP. So Ajay Chaudhary, who is the board, who is our chairman of the board, he sent me a picture that listed Pharma at the top in terms of investment in R&D per capita, meaning per the earning, right? And Pharma was by top by far, and that's why one reason to focus on Pharma is that they at least seem to, compared to other choices, they seem to understand the value of R&D a lot. And since we are original AI-driven IP generation engine, for us to see the application there is very valuable. And then when we connected with IPA, this whole concept emerged, and that we found a lot of opportunity, and I will discuss concrete opportunities. Now, shall I discuss now or later?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
If you can share 2 or 3 concrete opportunities.
Yeah. So we have experts who have prior expertise in working with US Pharma and having the results. And I also had a project funded by Wipro that ultimately was sold to Novartis, and at much higher value than the investment they made into us. So we developed probably the world's largest knowledge graph in pharma. We have that, and we'll be refreshing that as the last iteration was about 2 years ago. You might be aware that recently a drug is in the market where much of the development was enabled by the use of pharma for the research. And I'll give you more specific details of what that drug is and such. But just having this knowledge graph, you can do question answering in your research your people doing research in pharma, and they can really cut down on the things they need to look at and connect efficacy with toxicology and others much more easily, much faster. And this knowledge graph would have extracted knowledge of millions of documents, right? So that knowledge in papers will be available to you to browse, to query, to question answer. Second is that number of my colleagues here, particularly Dr. Honawar and Srinivas Parthasarathi, they have done original work in drug development, small molecule design part of it. And so, for example, Dr. Honawar works on diffusion model when enabled by knowledge graph can be applicable in a relatively short term. The third is clinical data collection and clinical trial related support. So AI is used for workflow, understanding quality of data collected, ensuring FDA requirements are satisfied. So the likelihood of any FDA coming back and say you are missing this or that, or conditions were not right, you reduce that part. The fourth is production quality. So, for example, I have worked on automating in manufacturing environment where lots of parameters are collected by sensors and whatever observational one, and you can find rare exceptions. You can find root cause analysis. You can do replanning of your current automated flow. So, and the final one is regulatory compliance. So we can take regulatory documents, create a knowledge graph from that, which is process knowledge, and then help you implement such that whatever you are doing, you can, is compliant with the regulation. So converting all these documents that you have to read into structured representation of knowledge and use it for, your process flow, plus automatically filling out the forms and checking the validated forms. These are kind of lower hanging fruits that also we can work on. So these are some of the things that our team already is aware of it. Some of the things we have done, some of the things we think we can do in 1-2 years. Our idea is to work with IPA in the first year and, in the near term, understand what the industry, the 23 members of IPA, has what is their priority, which we are going to do in the afternoon, at least we kick off the process, and then start working hopefully on projects that can be shared by the whole membership, or work on also ones that they want to do because they have proprietary knowledge, they want to work on inflammation, or they want to work on some other class of drugs and they want to do it separately. So either of the way, we'll try to understand how we want to move with the help of IPA and BCG. That's the idea.
Thank you, Dr. Sheth, for sharing that. Obviously, a lot of exciting opportunities in both. You spoke about discovery, development. Let me actually turn it over to Sharvil now to actually hear the voice in terms of, what are the pharma companies looking at. So, Sharvil, as you think about your own organization and where you feel there are opportunities more in the near term, if you could talk about, from what you heard from Dr. Sheth and more generally, where do you see practical, measurable outcomes where you would like to deploy AI in the near term and maybe also, after that in the longer term?
Thanks, Priyanka. So, I think as many organizations, we all keep sort of toying with the idea of how do we use AI. AI is the buzzword today. And while we have sporadically been doing a lot of things, let's say use cases or test cases across many areas, but we have never run enterprise-wide solutions like we do when we use SAP or any other ERP system. So I think as an organization, we feel that it's necessary now to run AI as a enterprise-wide solution rather than just doing piecemeal activity. Having said so, we are responsible for our profits and revenue, and more importantly, patient lives. So we also have to see where we will see the maximum value that we can create. So for us, or for generally, I would say the first is definitely compliance, regulatory quality. I think these areas do offer a lot of opportunity using AI. I look at it this way, whenever we have a batch failure or whenever we have to file a regulatory submission, a lot of effort and time goes in writing and reading and making sure the document is in order. And I think AI definitely can solve for it, because today the issue with the regulatory responses is not about science, it's more about documentation. So AI can definitely solve for that documentation, and instead of spending hours on variation filing and doing other regulatory work, we can replace it, I would say, by using AI language models or other models to make sure that what we are replying to is compliant and we're not bypassing anything, but more importantly, speeding up the process. I think the second is manufacturing and operations and quality. I think there's tremendous opportunity with using AI and automation together to improve productivity, to reduce the footprint of facilities, to reduce time to market, and all of these things will help both on terms of the environmental goals, but also on terms of the quality goals. So a lot of times we're doing something called the golden batch. We're talking about predictive analysis. Today, most of the quality metrics are when something fails, and then we become very good at finding the reasons when something failed. But I think using AI, we could definitely see how do we prevent some of these losses or some of these deviations or some of these failures that we get to see. And I think that can be a very meaningful value for the company, because that really improves the quality metrics for the organizations. And as Zydus, we also want to spend a lot of time to make sure that we have first time right, we have the right batches coming out, we have the golden batch rule that comes out, we have better, lesser kappas that we need to take, so lesser documentation that we need to manage. And we see tremendous productivity gains, at least 30 to 50% in doing so, and that's what we want to aim for. So our shift is, how do we be more preventive rather than reactive in most of what we do in the manufacturing? And that's one area where AI can be very helpful. And then obviously R&D, everybody talks about the big promise of R&D. I come from an R&D background. I also do believe that there is great promise, but it is not short term. So while we try and make sure that we get the quick wins where we want to, we also have to work on seeing how we use R&D to different areas. I mean, we have looked at how do we do more indications for a particular drug, how do we improve the width or the, how much more can we see with the drug in terms of solutions, how do we optimize so many leads or some of the leads that we have. And I think it will help us expand the whole space of research. But anyway, the final call is obviously with the scientists and the research people who really make that call. But more importantly, it will build a lot of capabilities to do things faster, which is very important in R&D, and build strong credibility doing so. So I think these are some of the things that I think will be very important for us, and our view is that we should scale AI meaningfully in the company. I know some of these things are challenging, but it is possible today with the use cases that we get to see. So that's what the endeavor is going to be for the organization.
Well, thanks, Sharvil, for sharing that perspective. You spoke about documentation, productivity, first time right, and also then R&D. Maybe Winslow, I can have you come in. Right now, not from your India lens, but from all the years that you've spent globally with Lilly. Where have you seen companies like Lilly leverage AI? Of course, there's a lot more focus on discovery there. But what are some of the learnings now that you spend time in India that you think from your global experience can be leveraged in India using AI?
Thank you. I think there's two things when we look at AI that are very exciting, particularly from the industry perspective. One, I think from both sides. It speeds innovation. How can we get innovation to the market? But it also helps us to deliver a more personalized experience for patients. And that's something so it's across the value chain. There was a lot of discussion around discovery, development, and so forth. I won't talk a ton about that. I do want to focus one thing, though. As we think about our global capability centers, what we are seeing is a big investment, and we just opened one in Hyderabad. It's all about tech AI. AI has to be built on data, and that data has to have a governance and a foundation. And these centers are a great way for us to establish that in India and then export that across our organization. And so that's really where our focus is. As we start to think from the commercial uses, which I find very exciting, is it allows us to look at data in a different way. One of our biggest challenges is how do we speed getting our products to the patients? and how do we identify where they are? And I know that there's a lot of data, but as we start to think about how we're using that data to identify where patients are, identify patients in their specific needs, and then how do we communicate them with them on a medical perspective, leveraging our teams from a sales perspective to give them better insights to translate that to patients. And then ultimately, where I think we should be looking as an industry is how do we get more interoperable data in India so that we can then have more real world data that has the quality for payers and for regulators. If we can unlock that, then we can move from manufacturing scale to really value innovation. And I think that's the true opportunity in the long term that we have. Right now, one of the things we're looking at in India, to be quite frank, is when I was in the US heading our commercial business, because of the amount of data, because of the connectivity of that data, it was very easy to apply AI to what we do commercially. What I'm finding in India is that infrastructure needs to be built. Having said that, even without that infrastructure, there's a lot that we can do, and I don't think that infrastructure is just us. It's the healthcare industry. It's thinking about health records. It's thinking about other players within the industry. We are doing a lot of B2B partnerships, and with hospitals, with pharmacies and so forth. I think if we can unlock that, there's great promise to take it not just from discovery right through to how do we get products approved, regulatory perspective, how do we monitor safety, but then also how do we make sure that those innovations impact patients ultimately.
No, thanks a lot, Winslow. That's a good segue to my next question to Mr. Jain. Mr. Jain, Winslow spoke about some of the more data infrastructure. You talk often to the government. If you could talk about, from a government's perspective, what are they focusing on? Maybe elucidate a little bit more. I know they've spoken a lot about clinical trials and making India a hub for that. So if you could talk about government's priorities, but also a little bit more on clinical trials using AI.
So thank you very much, Priyanka. And it's a privilege to be part of this panel discussion. It will be starting point of a very big agenda for Viksit Bharat. I remember, and Sherville has been part of it, IPA started Trust on Quality 10 years back, and we set up Quality Forum. Now is the Trust on AI and Innovation, and we will take that agenda forward. Today afternoon, we have everyone from IPA coming together, and we have also the advantage today Lilly joining us for this discussion. Lilly is the number one company in the world with 1 trillion market capitalization, nearing it, and they are playing a very important role in innovation. I will just put some of the data points. The largest investment in the world in any area is in healthcare. More than defense, more than education. We spend around 10% of world spending on healthcare. And the critical issue for healthcare, whenever you talk of spending, defense is around 3 to 4%, education is 3 to 4%, and in India also, if I took private healthcare expenditure, it is around 4.5–5%. The critical issue whenever we talk of healthcare expenditure is access of healthcare, and second is innovation. India has done tremendously well on affordable access. As Priyanka was saying, we supply 20% of world medicine. But as far as innovation is concerned, we are way behind. So AI is affordable innovation at a scale. And if we can begin that journey, AI, affordable innovation at scale, that will be a big starting point. Yes, we will keep on building on quality and manufacturing, quick wins, as Sherville pointed it out. We are working separately on it. But the other agenda which we have to take forward is affordable innovation, and that is again the priority, and Sherville has been playing a very important role. Government has announced in the recent budget, they have announced clinical trial centers, 1,000 clinical trial centers. Although globally we hold 17% of world population, but we do only 1% clinical trial in this country. Big opportunity to take this agenda forward. The issues which are there are patient enrollment takes more than 1 year time compared to 3 months in China. Our compliance rate for patient enrollment is very, very low. 70% of money in drug discovery is in clinical trials. and we are way behind. And that's why many of IPA companies, they will do clinical trials abroad than in India. So there's a big, big opportunity, and maybe both IPA companies as well as OPPI companies can take this agenda forward. How do we build clinical trial space as such, which is very, very important, in addition to quality and manufacturing, where the quick wins will be there. Identify the specific project, take the agenda forward. Health Minister yesterday in this summit announced 2 areas. One is AI in healthcare. He announced in this Bharat Mandapam yesterday, and he also announced open data systems. And that will become very, very important. The point which Priyanka becomes very, very important. We are Aadhaar card, the kind of data set which we have generated. 1.4 billion Aadhaar card holders. We have done a great job in UPI, but as far as healthcare database is concerned, we have got 500 million users of Aadhaar card, but only 5 million usage is there. So unless we build a data system, and that is what Winslow was talking about, how do we encourage and build a data set? And then India can be using the data set for discovery and innovation in many of the healthcare systems. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jain. I think lots of interesting points on the opportunity in terms of productivity, in terms of speed to market. Maybe time to shift gears a little bit to the challenges and how we can overcome those. So Sharvil, let me start with you. You spoke about a lot of opportunities and where you feel AI can unlock productivity. But as you look inside, what are the challenges that you feel need to be overcome, or today are holding your teams back in moving forward?
So even before we started talking about adopting to AI, this was the first point, and the first is always data. People have illusions of data in organizations. We always have the data, but there's a trust deficit when it comes to the data set. The second is data also lies in silos. I would say sometimes power is with knowledge. Knowledge comes from data. So there is all these silos and inconsistencies that exist in organizations. And so it becomes very difficult because of there is no single version of truth when it comes to some of the things that we do because of our broken processes. And a lot of times, in the end, the people who have to review something don't trust it well enough. And if you don't trust it, then whatever comes out of any tech part is just a PowerPoint presentation and never anything that you can execute. So I think it's very important that we create an environment where we get the right amount of data and we make sure that it is available and is more democratized to make sure that we can use it in the right way. And we don't have a shortage of data. It's just a question of that we don't have this belief that exists in the right way. The second I see, and this is through the journey on the last 1 year, is this addiction to do pilots. Every time we talk about adopting to something, there's this whole idea, let's do a few pilots. And in pharma or in we are very used to this idea of pilots, because in drug and anything to do with new molecules, anything, we are very cautious. We want to test something till it fails, rather than saying, let's, whatever we have, let's move ahead with it. And it's sometimes indefinite in terms of how we do things. So I think that becomes a very, very big issue. And most of the time, these pilots fail because there is no leader or there is no owner of this. And I think somebody told me that AI without an owner is like an expensive demo. And we don't want to go through these expensive demos in the organization. So there is a strong need for ownership and accountability, which is required, and that helps. And the third is, I think we talk about AI and data scientists and other aspects. We talk about the people who manage the critical functions in the organization, but we have a gap of people who can translate between what is AI, can be used, and how the data can be fed in. So the hardest part is not about getting AI engineers or getting about people. It's about how do you have the right people motivated as translators in the organization who can move some of these capabilities, and that is definitely a talent gap because people are still learning the benefits and technology on AI. So that becomes very difficult, and that's the hardest part, I would say, that we need to overcome. Thank you.
No, thank you. Very relevant points. Maybe let me, talk a bit more, ask Dr. Sheth to talk a bit more about data. I think we've all spoken about trust in data. Dr. Sheth, as I was reading some of your work, the approach that you use talks about explainability and trust. So in the work that you've done, if you could talk about how you've overcome some of these challenges that all the panelists here are talking about, so that both at the organizational level but at the industry level, more could be adopted.
AI is driven by data. However, AI is also now helping with the quality of the data a lot more. Just as an instance, last week Sarvam announced the quality of improvement in OCR in different languages. But let's say it's English, or let's say it's any of the regional language. There is substantial improvement in how we can convert legacy data into digital data and do further quality check. Technological help is there. What Dr. Sharvil talked about in the context of human part of it, the leadership part of it, that challenge remains. The decision making and ownership and willingness to set up the process and then believe in that process. Other very important issue about the trustworthy of data, that's a very important line of work that my own group has done quite a bit of. And it comes down to the following. When you take generative AI, is basically all black box technology. So virtually, you can hardly do anything where you can create an AI process that is explainable to a user, to the right user. So suppose I'm using AI in medicine, then the doctors need to be able to, it should be explained in the form of doctor. So there we follow the a new generation of AI, it's called neurosymbolic AI. So the neuro part is what you see in the current Gen AI. So essentially, at a very high level explanation is that you learn patterns from the data and you create what is called as this large parametric space. But it is probabilistic. So there is no definitive understanding of what the data is. There is a pattern from the data that is out there, and when question is hit against that parameter space, you can create something where you have learned how to write that looks to human, very, very, human-like, and in that case you can trust. Nevertheless, there is no way of repeatability, and there is let's say there is natural language processing, but there is no natural language understanding. Understanding comes by grounding it into the way, in the vocabularies that humans use. So in our mental health example, a project, we created a knowledge graph from the medical literature that is used. DSM-5 is one aspect of it for training mental health personnel. Now, when we give the explanation using this neurosymbolic method, symbolic part comes from that knowledge graph, then the terms used are the terms that doctors are trained for, right? So, water retention in a body part versus edema, right? And so, giving the appropriate terms and making sure that is indeed edema, is not water outside the body, that kind of, understanding system has, and that can be applied. That makes the things very trustworthy. I'll give you one more example. When you want to make trustworthy, you have to do this human level explanation. Other is safety. We all have heard about suicide teens have gone through suicide because of their conversation with these large language models. Well, when we developed our co-pilot for mental health, we took care of medical knowledge that for a MDD, major depressive disorder, in the conversation, you do not want to bring up suicidability. So, in our knowledge base, we would have knowledge that in this context, this is no-no. And so, if you use a regular LLM, it will ask questions. It does not understand the context of MDD. It will ask questions that will be, that will bring up suicidability, and that's bad. Doctor would not do that. So we will prevent that question. We will modify the question such that it belongs to that. And then there are other things. I'll say one last thing, and that is called alignment. So in the human world, in the society, we have some regulations, we have some policy, we have some laws, right? We have some guidelines. And somehow we have to follow that. In driving, we have to follow some guidelines, more in West, less in India, but we do. Now, alignment would mean that the AI, not just like human, would also follow those guidelines. So if I have medical guidelines for diagnosis, medical guidelines for treatment, I would represent that in the symbolic form, and this neurosymbolic approach would make sure that those guidelines are consulted and is adhering to those guidelines, not doing the things that you do without the context in a LLM or in a neural network based system, right? So the ecosystem, the new set of techniques that are coming in the picture, and which we started working on in 2016, are giving us next generation of AI, which IRO, by the way, is building. We are building a platform on the top of infrastructure to create models that are more trustworthy in the way I described.
Well, thank you, Dr. Sheth. What I'm taking away that the problems of data and trust in data can certainly be overcome with the new techniques that are there. So maybe let me then ask a question on the second topic you mentioned, Sharul, which is leadership. And Winslow, maybe I can ask you, both in your India commercial operations and growth and in your operations in GCC, how are you thinking about taking pilots to scale? How are you thinking about leadership so that you can create real impact?
Thank you. I really like the comment around pilots and not driving it. I think you have to have a clear view of what the organization is trying to achieve with AI. We do that on a functional level. We know what we're trying to do from a research perspective. Within commercial, where I spend a lot of my time, we know how we're applying it, and not just how we're piloting it, but what is the roadmap to what we believe is working now. How do we scale that across the organization? How do we get our teams to adopt that? And I think that's one of the largest challenges. As leaders, you can have a clear strategy, but how do you do the change management so that the teams understand how they're going to adopt it and bringing them along in the journey? I'll just give a very clear example where I've seen this from a couple of different organizations, but just as we were thinking about adaptive targeting, how do you get a sales representative or even a medical professional to understand that this is a tool that is actually trusted, as we talked about, and is going to allow you to be even more effective? And so I think giving them that understanding and how it's going to fit into their workflow is really important. And so that's a lot of what we're spending time on. Additionally, I think there's also, from a leadership perspective, we have to be honest about how we're driving. Many of the GCCs scaled on FTEs. That's the last way that any new organization is thinking about it. And work is increasing. And so when we think about AI and automation and how we're going to apply it, it's not to say that we're going to decrease, but we're going to increase our capacity. And I think that is for leadership challenges, to say, be very clear about what we're doing, be very clear about what the outcome is, and bring your teams along in a very transparent way so that you can actually get there. Last thing I will say is measurement of it is critically important. Is it working? Are we getting the outcome we want? And then if not, how do we change that and then take that pilot and make it something that's actually going to work? And so those are some of the challenges that we have from a leadership perspective.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Winslow. I think what you mentioned around integrating into workflow and change management, I fully resonate with that. Mr. Jain, maybe we can, I can ask you to talk. I think you heard the perspectives from both, Winslow, Sharvil. But if I now ask from an ecosystem perspective, what would be your wish that if a few gaps from the ecosystem building blocks could be fixed over the next few years, the whole industry could benefit and leap forward?
So two areas which are very important. One is we have to go to ICH harmonization in terms of regulatory system because that will give us global credibility to move forward in that agenda. That is a very, very high priority as far as IPA, OPPI, and all the companies are concerned. If we start ICH process for clinical trials and those systems, it will take around 2 years. And if we get into quality manufacturing, it will take around 5 to 6 years. So that's point number one. Point number two is data is fragmented at this particular moment. There is data lying at IITs, Indian Institute of Sciences. So what we want to do at a macro level, and that's why IPA and IRO coming together is, can we play some role in that data integration? And that's why what Professor Seth has been talking about, and PCG is our knowledge partner, we would like to take that agenda forward because that will accelerate the journey of going forward as far as AI agenda is concerned. And IPA always believes in sharing the best practices. We are creating a platform, and Shavil and Pankaj Patel, who have been proponent of innovation, he says, let's create a platform, let's share the best practice, and let's evaluate the progress regularly. So what we are today doing after this session is creating a platform of AI where companies come together, share the successes, and how do we move the agenda forward.
Thank you, Mr. Jain. Maybe, Sharvil, I'll ask you to just come in and close. Beyond what you shared from your company's perspective, would you like to talk about what would be your wish for the industry from your vantage point of president of IPA, also over the next couple of years?
Thank you. So, I think I'll start with the most important point is democratizing AI. I think while in our industry we all compete on a day-to-day level, but we also collaborate on a day-to-day level. And this is one industry which really works together to bring a positive change. So I think that has been one key factor in terms of how the pharma industry in India has been developed. And there are some things that can help everybody, and it doesn't become only a competitive advantage. So, regulatory intelligence, the quality knowledge base that Mr. Sudarshan Jain was talking about, the real evidence platform, creating a pool of data that everybody can use. I think all of these things can be done together, and we don't need to all duplicate the same effort as companies. And if we are able to, I think I say we compete on products, but we don't need to compete on anything else. So I think we have to make sure that we can create shared opportunities. At Zydus, we also have AI labs, and I have told my team that anything that they develop on the quality, on the manufacturing, on some of these processes on regulatory, we must make sure their open access is given to other companies to make sure that if we find it good and successful, we should make sure it's more democratized across the industry, and it'll really lift the overall industry. I think beyond that is, I'm sure today there will be a lot of discussion on it, but we should at least have 50 good AI cases, use cases that we must identify and make sure that as an IPA we take them forward. And the outcomes obviously have to have the parameters of time, quality, compliance, and cost. And I think that's what we want to drive across in the IPA to make sure that the companies champion some of these initiatives of AI and make sure that everything is measurable, because what we don't measure, we really don't give value to. So it's very important that these are measurable outcomes that we accept. And the third is what Mr. Seth said also, that how do we create trust in the area. And it's important that AI doesn't become a project, but AI becomes an enterprise-wide capability or an operating capability. And how do we make sure that both for within my company but also across the right governance, the right validation, the right explainability of truth, or sort of say non-hallucinations that AI should have, and importantly the training that needs to get given to all the people who are working on this becomes very important. So I think the most important part is, in a regulatory industry, trust is a real scaling factor, and as soon as we can build trust through these forums and through these workshops, I think we can see a faster adoption of this capability within the organizations. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherwin. I think I'm leaving this panel with a lot of optimism. I think there's also, all of you are showing great confidence that we can step forward on the journey from pilots to large-scale deployment in the transition from volume-based to innovation, value-based pharma industry. So thanks a lot all. I think we have just a few minutes for maybe one or two quick audience questions. It'll probably just take one or two.
Thank you so much for this session. It was really insightful as a young entrepreneur building in the same space. One thing I missed in this panel and I wanted to ask, like, as a startup who's trying to work for such a regulated industry, there's always an inhibition for, a startup coming in and working with pharma companies like Zydus. What is your recommendation that we should do that creates that ecosystem for even startups to bud in this sector and help companies to actually use innovative solutions?
I don't have an answer, but it's a tough question that you've asked, because I think a lot of effort has been put in, a lot of work has been done by all of you, and we get bombarded with requests, and it becomes very, very difficult to see how and what, where to allocate time to. So that's definitely a big issue. I think the right answer for that, Mr. Sudarshan, would be that today we should make sure we create a portal, a platform where some of this gets, some of these leads that get generated through reach outs, make sure that somebody through the IPA, we create a forum where they evaluate and see and then propagate it across the IPA members, because it just becomes otherwise very, very difficult to manage on day-to-day basis. The only other thing I can say is that as in organizations, we as leaders are pushing up people to evaluate ideas, and as more and more of this gets done in the company and leadership in the organizations take AI as the core centerpiece of how they want to use their day-to-day, I think they will, I hope one day, reach out back to the startups rather than today the startups making all the effort to reach out to the big corporates. But we should definitely have an agenda where we can have a sort of a knowledge pool of which are the new AI startups that are there and what work they're doing, and then as companies find it appropriate, should reach out to them. But it's a tough one.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for a great session. I'm Snehada. I work for the healthcare sector. So my question to all of you is, of course, healthcare and particular pharma being such a sensitive sector, there are a lot of extra policies that govern us. Now, in this situation, how do you think that the speed to innovation can be done, and can AI be part of that? Because I think the way AI has, changed in the last 2 years, so many things have evolved in multiple sectors. But with pharma or healthcare in particular, the time or the speed is not that great. So how do you think we can really speed this up and we can match to the same solutions that are actually available, even which can help the healthcare and pharma sector?
So thank you very much for this question. Whenever we talk of healthcare, there are issues related to privacy, there are issues related to regulatory environment, and how do you balance that part with deregulation. And all of us are aware that government has set up deregulation committee with Mr. Rajiv Gaba as the chairman. So what we are trying to do, and in this budget, first time, you see so much emphasis, and clinical trials they are talking that how do we simplify our process, so approval of drugs and approval of clinical trial guidelines, they match the global standards. That is an intention. Second, all of us are also aware that government is setting up a new cadre in CDSCO, scientific cadre. So both the areas, building the talent base, it will take time. Overall, simplifying the processes and moving forward. But at the end of the day, the critical issue is how do we deal with the privacy issues, because one has been monitoring, creating database in this country. And Aadhaar card, when I started seeing 500 million, but the usage is only of 5 million. Lot to be moved as far as that area is concerned. During COVID time, we moved very fast with COVID.
Yeah, that's true. But I think that was the only time where I have seen
very,
the
very
speed
fast.
was really highest.
So R.S. Sharma, who played a role in Aadhaar card, he played a very important role for COVID. But lot to be taken forward in that area. Lot to be taken forward.
So do you think that the policymakers and the providers need more insights and training around the AI toolkit that could be available, which might just speed up this whole innovation or speed to innovation?
Let me tell you, they are much more sensitive and listening to every conversation for last 1 year. So there is a lot of movement forward in that particular space.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, I just have one question. For AI, the most important
We'll just make this
piece-
the last question. We are almost out of time, so we'll just,
Okay, sorry. For AI, information or data is the most critical element. So I have two questions. One, India is such a huge country, and we all know that data is really diverse. So, and I heard from most of you that it's either isolated or it's not connected, and we also have incomplete information despite our own. So what are, how is it that we would put this information in place? Because without this, the AI will never be a success for us. And two, there are multiple facets to the life science industry: discovery, R&D, manufacturing, commercial, supply chain. What I gather from some of you is some of these fields will be more advanced, and I believe manufacturing is a space where information is still pretty good with us, and we could put a lot of AI. But in some of the other pieces, so according to all of you, where do you think we will probably be a much more ahead as compared to the other fields in life science industry? Sorry.
No, so I think you already answered some of it, saying it'll wherever your data is captively held and more structured, obviously it becomes the easiest one to move forward. And the other is, as I said, we have to create partnerships like IRO is there and others to make sure we create Indian data set, Indian knowledge graphs. We as organizations have a lot of phase 3, phase 4 data, pharmacovigilance data that we collect. Post-marketing surveillance data that we collect, which the regulators also hold today. So I think there is all of this data that is there, and I'm sure over a period of time, this will also be a wealth of data that will get created. In fact, a lot of diagnostic test data is anonymized and available today. So, I mean, everything is for some, you pay for everything what you want to get for. But today, I think there is enough data available. In the West, obviously, it's highly evolved and structured and already built out. In India, we need to still go through it, and I think have to be a champion between institutions, government, and academia to make sure that some of this gets done. But I'm sure as organizations, we would also champion some of these with partnerships like with IRO and others. So that's what we hope to do, because in the end, what we're all working for is better patient outcomes and patient lives. And while we do all of this, if we don't make any difference in that, obviously we have not done much. So we hope that will make a difference.
Thank you.
I think we have more questions than answers from this session, and that just tells what an insightful discussion this was. Please give a big round of applause for our speakers. And quick announcement, because the time is up, so I'll request if people want to have conversations to please move out of the room and continue the conversations. Thank you so much.